Assalamu alaikum. My name is Wani Masood and I'm going to present task-based syllabus. So a task-based syllabus is, in simple words, it is learning by doing. It represents a particular realization of communicative language teaching. In other words, what arguably permeates it is the need to act as an interface between purely pedagogical goals and real-world activities. So instead of making list of grammatical, notional, functional, and other items, the designers should conduct a needs analysis, which is instrumental in yielding a list of target tasks that learners will need to carry out in the real world outside the classroom. Any approach to language pedagogy should concern itself with three essential elements: language data, information, and practice. Language data means samples of spoken and written language. There is no denying that without access to data, it is next to impossible to learn a language. Minimally, what is needed to acquire a language is access to appropriate samples of oral language in context that make transparent the relationship between form, function, and use. Authentic data are samples of spoken or written discourse that have not been specifically designed for the purpose of language teaching. Non-authentic data are samples of spoken and written discourse that have been designed on an ad hoc basis. Information besides data, learners need information, experiential information about the target culture, linguistic information about the target language systems, and process information about how to go about learning the language. So the third essential element is practice. It is highly unlikely that one will get very far without extensive practice. In designing practice opportunities for learners, Nilan makes a distinction between tasks, exercises, and activities. A task is a communicative act that does not usually have a restrictive focus on a particular grammatical structure and has a non-linguistic outcome. An exercise usually has a restrictive focus on a specific language element and has a linguistic outcome. An activity usually has a restrictive focus on one or two language items, but also has a communicative outcome. So Nidan distinguishes target tasks into the following types: real-world pedagogical rehearsal, activation, enabling language communication. So the real-world tasks are a communicative act achieved through language in the world outside the classroom. Pedagogical tasks are a piece of classroom work involving learners in comprehension, manipulation, production, and interaction in the target language, while their attention is focused on the meaning rather than form. They have a non-linguistic outcome and can be divided into rehearsal tasks or activation tasks. So, in rehearsal tasks, a classroom work in which learners rehearse is used in a class, a communicative act they will carry out outside the class, basically. So, for example, a student writes a resume, and now now two students imagine that they're applying for one of these jobs, and then they have to compare each other for the application of the job and see who is the best candidate. An activation task, a piece of classroom work involving communication interaction, but not one in which learners will be rehearsing for some out of class communication. Rather, their purpose is to activate the acquisition process. For example, we list the three things we are thinking about doing this week. And then in a group, we tell our partners that what you're thinking about doing. For each activity, get a recommendation and a reason from three different people. Then write the best recommendations in the chart. Enabling skills, mastery of language systems, grammar, pronunciation, vocabulary, syntax, etc., which will enable learners to take part in communicative tasks. Language exercise, a piece of classroom work focusing on and involving learners in manipulating some aspect of the linguistic system. For example, write the past tense form of these verbs. Go is are to have worked, study, by, etc. Now think of four things you did yesterday. Write sentences in the blank. Communicative activity, a piece of classroom work focusing on a particular linguistic feature but also involving the general exchange of meaning. For example, write three hobbies or activities you like doing, and then ask each person in your group what they like doing. Hence, to summarize, what this labor designer does is to identify the knowledge and skills the learners need to carry out the task. The next step is to sequence and integrate them with exercises that aim to develop the requisite knowledge and skills. The steps involved in designing language programs are the following: select and sequence real world target tasks, create pedagogical tasks, identify enabling skills, create communicative activities and language exercises, sequence and integrate pedagogical tasks, communicative activities, and language exercises. Thank you.